This is your 28storms.com tropical weather update for Sunday, October 23rd. There hasn't been much change in the tropics since yesterday. We're still dealing with the area of low pressure just to the east of Honduras. As of 2 p.m. Eastern Time, the Hurricane Center is giving the system a 60% chance of developing within the next 2 days. And of course, we still have the tropical disturbance moving toward the Windward Islands. That system is only being given a 10% chance of development. And with time, the system will also make it into the Western Caribbean. Starting first with the system to the east of Honduras and Nicaragua, we can see that it is still somewhat poorly defined. However, there has been a slight increase in organization over the past 36 hours. We can see that there definitely is a weak low-level surface circulation here, and it's just a matter of it becoming more organized. The convection is still somewhat displaced to the west due to some easterly wind shear, but upper-level conditions could become a little bit more favorable over the next 2 to 3 days, and that is when we will have the best potential for this system to develop further into a tropical depression or tropical storm. The regional water vapor imagery shows our upper level low continuing to move more toward the north here near Bermuda, and that is going to allow for some more mid to upper level ridging currently over the central Atlantic to continue propagating more toward the west into the central and western Caribbean. So over the next week, upper level winds will gradually become more favorable to the south of Cuba, and it remains to be seen as to whether or not we will still have an area of surface low pressure to take advantage of those conditions. Of course, if we are looking for any type of development, we can't have this surface low continue to move too far to the north in the next 2 to 3 days. Otherwise, it will also be facing southwest wind shear and a lot of dry air stemming from the trough that is currently draped over the southeast Gulf of Mexico, Yucatan, and southern Florida. The latest SIMS wind shear charts show everything quite well. This is our main tropical system of emphasis right here near Honduras and Nicaragua. We see that there is a weak mid to upper level ridge located pretty close to the center of the system, and that's helping to promote some development just a little bit. And of course, we have that second pocket of upper level ridging that we talked about, currently located just to the east of the Windward Islands. And with time over the next 3 to 6 days, both of these areas of mid to upper level ridging will merge over the central and western Caribbean. And as we can see, the upper level winds are already fairly light over much of the east and central Caribbean, and these favorable upper level winds will steadily march more toward the west. Now, there are two model camps as of this afternoon. We have the CMC and GFS that slowly take the system around the Honduran coastline, but over the next 3 to 4 days, this is the CMC model, and you can quite clearly see that it takes it just too far west into Central America. Therefore, the chances for any development would be fairly slim in this scenario. And this idea is once again supported by the 12Z run of the GFS model. It actually does try to develop it briefly, but within the next 3 to 4 days it also pushes the system more into Honduras, so no development is anticipated by this model. The latest GFTL run is also taking our system deep into Central America. However, even with that said, it still tries to develop the system in the Gulf of Honduras just prior to a landfall near Belize. However, there is an alternative scenario starting with the 12Z run of the H-Wharf model. The H-Wharf is showing development once the area of low pressure gets to the north of Honduras, and in fact it intensifies the system in such a way that it will allow the system to be steered more so by the mid to upper levels, and with a second trough beginning to develop over the northern Gulf of Mexico, this would promote a turn gradually toward the northeast in the general direction of southern Florida. This model idea is also being somewhat supported by the 12Z run of the ECMWF. As we go into Monday and especially Tuesday, the low does deepen just a little bit, and this could quite possibly be a minimal tropical depression or tropical storm as we go into the day on Wednesday. And at this point, the model has it located just to the southeast of Cozumel, Mexico, with a fairly decent mid to upper level ridge located over the southeast United States. And by Thursday, we notice that the low has actually weakened down to 1006 millibars, quite possibly because of the second trough beginning to dig into the lower part of the United States. And by Friday, notice that the trough has completely replaced any ridging that was once there a couple days ago. And out ahead of that trough over the Gulf Coast, we may see a second increase in some southwesterly wind shear, and that could be the main reason why our system is beginning to weaken as it becomes absorbed by a cold front. And eventually, this is now the forecast for Saturday. We see an area of low pressure here, and we can make out a cold front that is extending into southern Florida and the southern Gulf of Mexico. So by this point on Saturday, any tropical system that was down there has been absorbed by the much larger non-tropical feature. And finally, this is the 12Z run of the UK Met model. As we go into Monday and Tuesday, we still definitely see an area of low pressure to the northeast of Honduras. And as we go into Wednesday and Thursday, notice that the system is beginning to make that turn a little bit more toward the north. The ridging that was once over Florida is now more so to the southwest of Bermuda, and we see a trough beginning to develop over the southern plains. And finally, by Friday, the trough is now anchored well across much of the southeast United States with an attending cold front, and that is going to help to dissipate any system that tries to get into the southeast Gulf of Mexico. So this is quite obviously a very complicated pattern, but with all that being said, I still think that there is a 2 to 4 day window for this system to possibly get its act together just to the north of Honduras. It would not take much for this system to develop into a tropical depression or tropical storm, so I feel as though the 60% probability being given by the Hurricane Center is on target, and I do think that this system will eventually make that turn more toward the north, possibly impacting the extreme eastern half of the Yucatan Peninsula, before eventually beginning to make a turn more toward the northeast into the southeast Gulf of Mexico. But by the time the system begins to inch closer to Florida, we more than likely will have a cold front coming down from the northern Gulf, and that could initiate a lot more wind shear and dry air. So as of right now, this is not looking like a significant tropical weather system. Perhaps the greatest threat could be the risk of flooding if the system continues to linger around Honduras, providing heavy rainfall along some of the higher terrain. Either way, we will continue to closely monitor things here at 28storms.com, and you can anticipate more updates throughout all of next week.